Welcome to CLAT Labs 101, the only video series you need to watch in order to maximize your score and your rank in the upcoming CLAT exam. In the previous videos, we have dealt with 3 modules so far. They are quants, the legal reasoning section and the logical reasoning section. Now today it is time to deal with another module for the CLAT exam, and that is the current affairs section or the GK section. So without any delay, let us get started. Like always, before I tell you the specific tips and tricks to maximize your score in this section, and before I tell you how do you prepare for this section, let us get a brief overview. So first of all, you have around 28 questions in this section. This is the scoring section. The only reason this is a scoring section is because in the CLAT exam, it will mainly focus on current affairs, that is, things which are going on around us as we speak, and not something related to the Indian freedom struggle or ancient Harappan civilization or something related to inventors and inventions. None of that stuff in the CLAT exam. Next, instead of a memory test, instead of being expected to memorize lots of facts and dates, in the CLAT exam, most of the answers for the questions in the GK section will be found within the passage itself. There might be some questions, so maybe 2 out of 5 questions for a passage might require you to have certain background knowledge or certain background information. But for the most part, answers will be found within the passage only. The next thing that you have to remember is that since this section in the CLAT exam is based on comprehension, you don't need to mug up any facts at all. Unlike other law entrance exams, where the GK section is based on memory, in the CLAT exam, you don't have to mug up any facts. That is not necessary. In the previous slide, I told you some important points that you would do well to keep in mind for preparing for this section in the CLAT exam. Now again, it's time for me to answer the $1 million question, and that is, how do I actually prepare for this section? What do I need to do? So the first thing that you need to do is to subscribe to a good daily English newspaper. Now I recommend, and most of other coaches will recommend, that you should subscribe either to the Hindu or to the Indian Express. These are the only 2 recommended papers which have the quality and the depth which is expected from a daily English newspaper. Number 2, you also have to subscribe to a quarterly or to a monthly current affairs magazine. Now, if you are a student of the Focal Point Law Classes and Research Center, you will be supplied with a copy of The Economist as part of the coaching program. So that is the first step. You have to subscribe to a daily English newspaper, and you also have to read a monthly or a quarterly magazine dealing with current affairs. And the best magazine recommended for this purpose is The Economist, which is a British publication. In the previous slide, I recommended that you should subscribe to a daily English newspaper and to a monthly or a quarterly current affairs magazine. Now, you are supposed to read the newspaper daily, the keyword being daily, day in and day out. If you don't do that, it won't make too much difference and you won't see any marked improvement in your mock scores. Now, before I tell you about step number 2 that you can do in order to maximize your score in this section, I want to divert for a little bit. When you are solving mocks for the CLAT exam, I don't recommend that you should buy or subscribe for any online test series. The simple reason is that the CLAT exam is an offline exam. It takes place in the pen and paper format. So I will always recommend that you should buy books with mock tests and solve one each week at a minimum. Now, as far as other law entrance exams are concerned, like the CLAT and the MHCET, some of them take place in the online form. So, for those exams, an online test series might be preferred. But for the CLAT exam, I myself personally prefer offline test series, good old test series which are solved with a pen and paper. Now, with that out of the way, let me share you the next best tip or the next best trick in order to maximize your score in the current affairs section. Now, if you remember, in the first video of this series, I mentioned that we at Focal Point Law Classes and Research Center make it a point to interview as many toppers as we can for the CLAT exam in order to gather the best tips and tricks only for you, the prospective student. So, this is a trick which one of the toppers has recommended to us and which I also recommend that each and every student must follow. So, what you have to do is make cutouts First of all, buy a box file or a binder, and whenever you solve any mock test, make a cutout of the current affairs section and paste it or put it in the binder. So as you go on solving more and more mocks, the binder should thicken, the binder should increase in thickness as you collect more and more cutouts for the current affairs section. So your task is to read the binder almost every day. That will be like a compendium or a compilation of all the important events which have taken place in recent history, right? Let me repeat once again. As and when you solve the mock tests, you have to prepare cutouts of the GK section or the current affairs section and paste it in the binder. With passage of time, the number of mocks you have solved will go up, and so will the thickness of the binder. And like I said, your task is to read that binder every day. That is not negotiable, that is compulsory if you want to get a good score in the CLAT exam. If you are satisfied with a mediocre score, don't follow my advice and don't prepare a binder. The choice is yours. In the previous 2 slides, I shared the best 2 tips and tricks or strategies in order to maximize your score in the current affairs section of the CLAT exam. Now, let me tell you some topics of interest which are likely to show up in the CLAT exam. That is, passages pertaining or related to these topics are very likely to show up in the CLAT exam. Once again, I don't claim to have any insider knowledge whatsoever. These predictions are based on common sense, trend analysis, and my years of teaching experience. Right? So, some of the topics that you should focus on or read more about are any wars which are ongoing, like the Russia-Ukraine war, the Iran-Israel war, and also the recent skirmish between India and our beloved neighbors. Right? That is the first topic of great interest, that is wars. Next thing, trade deals are very, very pertinent. So, since Donald Trump became President of the United States once again in 2024, he is trying to refurbish all the trade deals all over the world. So, it is important that you know the salient facts about things like free trade agreements and tripartite agreements, so on and so forth. The next thing that you should focus on is economics, particularly the Indian economy and the problems, challenges, and the potential in the Indian economy. The next thing that you can focus on are natural disasters. Natural disasters are topics of great interest for the general public as well as for the examiners in the CLAT exam. So, try to find out as much as you can about any recent natural disasters which have taken place, maybe the loss of life which has occurred, and what relief efforts are underway and by whom, which organization was involved in the relief efforts. The next thing, and the last but not the least, most important topic of recent interest is international treaties. As you are well aware, the NATO treaty or the NATO countries are feeling very vulnerable. They are feeling very insecure because of the emergence of the BRICS alliance. Now, some countries in the BRICS alliance have opposing goals, they are opposed to each other, but you can say that it is a viable counter treaty or a counter organization to the NATO organization. Right? So, to summarize, the following topics are very, very important. Please focus on those: wars, trade deals, economics, natural disasters, and other international treaties. In the next slide, I will mention which topics are important as far as other law entrance exams are concerned. These topics are important specifically for the CLAT exam. Other law entrance exams, like I said, focus on the memory-based approach. It is a memory test. Therefore, the topics which are covered are slightly different. Let's find out in the next slide. So, before we start with the test yourself section, wherein I will ask you to test yourself to determine where do you stand in your preparation for the CLAT exam and how much more effort do you need to take. But before we turn to that, let me tell you in passing the topics which are important for other law entrance exams and not the CLAT exam. Like I said, other law entrance exams sometimes focus on the memory aspect as far as the GK section is concerned. Therefore, the topics of importance are slightly different. More topics are covered in some other law entrance exams. So, what should you focus on? You should focus on history, right from the Harappan civilization right up to 1947 and maybe even beyond that. Then you should focus on basic geography, like which is the highest peak in India, which is the highest peak in the Western Ghats, which is the longest river running in India, what is the catchment area or the delta area of a certain river, so on and so forth. Next thing you should focus on is inventors and inventions. For example, who invented the gramophone, who invented radio communication, basic stuff, right? Then Indian freedom struggle is very important. Many times questions are asked related to specific facts from the Indian freedom struggle. Therefore, it is a good idea to brush up all the basic history related to the freedom movement. And finally, you can get questions related to international organizations like the United Nations, the NATO, the BRICS, the SAARC, so on and so forth. So what are the functions of the United Nations Security Council? When did the NATO come into existence? Which was the counter organization to NATO during the Cold War, and what happened to that organization? How was it disbanded? What happened to the countries? So on and so forth. So like I said, these are some of the topics which are important and relevant as far as other law entrance exams are concerned. Now, in the next section, I will ask you to test yourself in order to determine where do you stand in your journey of preparation for cracking the CLAT exam. So let's find out. It's time to face the music. Time to find out how well prepared you are or how much better you need to do in order to do well in this section in the CLAT exam. So pause the video for a minute or two, take a look at all of the questions which appear on the right hand side of the screen and try to answer them the best you can. So, what is the 106th Constitutional Amendment? What is it all about? What is the Belt and Road Initiative? Which country has sponsored this initiative? Why does it pose a threat to India? Why did Donald Trump impose 50% tariffs on all the imports coming from India? Who is the present chairman as of 2025 of the Election Commission, and why is it important? Finally, who was the terrorist who was recently extradited from the United States in order to face trial right here in India? These are very basic level questions. If you have been skimming through the newspapers, even at least once a week, you are supposed to know the answers to these questions. I did not ask you tough questions deliberately. So, if you are aware of these answers without taking the help of AI or without taking the help of Google, congratulations, you are on the right track. Keep going like this and chances are you will crack the CLAT exam. Now, on the other hand, if you are not aware of these things, of these basic facts, you need to do much better. You need to step up your preparation game, and there is a small chance that you will crack the CLAT exam. Once again, thank you for joining us for this wonderful session in which we discussed how do you maximize your score in the current affairs section or the general knowledge section. Please note that this video was only relevant for the CLAT exam, because in other exams, as far as the GK section is concerned, a slightly different pattern is followed. Like I said, in other exams, the questions are based on memory and not on comprehension. So I definitely hope that you found this video helpful. Please share this video with your friends and also help them to maximize their score and their rank in the CLAT exam. Now, if you want to be a part of the Focal Point Law Classes and Research Center, if you would like to study with us, don't hesitate to get in touch immediately. Our batches have already started. They are already in full swing, but we can still accommodate you. There is no issue. Finally, thank you so much once again for joining us today. If you like the content, if you find it helpful, please share it with your friends who are preparing for law entrance exams, and don't forget to hit the subscribe button. It takes a lot of time, a lot of preparation and a lot of effort in order to produce quality material like this, and we would really appreciate a feedback. So with that in mind, I'll see you next week for the last part of this video series in which we will cover the English comprehension section. I was saving it for the last because it is the easiest part of the CLAT exam. Until then, goodbye, Jai Hind.